Okay, listen, you are just not going to believe what happened last week. I've got to tell you about my parents and my twin brother, Mike. You remember, the ones who basically threw me out of the house when I was only 14 years old, all because of some ridiculous rumors Mike spread. The ones who just vanished from my life for years, like I didn't even exist. Well, they popped back up, and guess why? To ask me for money. Can you even imagine the nerve? It's like something out of a bad movie. I'm 30 years old now, 30. And here they are after all that silence, after treating me like I was some kind of family embarrassment just because. I liked playing sports and having friends more than burying my nose in books. They always seemed absolutely convinced, for some reason, that Mike was heading for great things while I was the designated black sheep. They constantly held us up against each other, and it was so demoralizing. It really did a number on my self-esteem from the time I was just a little girl. Honestly, my childhood was just awful. I always felt like I was on the outside looking in, like I was just tolerated, not really loved. On our birthdays, Mike would have these huge fancy parties with all his friends, and I felt like I was just an afterthought, stuck in the background. He had friends over for sleepovers all the time, but I was never, ever allowed to even have a single friend come back to our place. To tell you the truth, I hated pretty much every single minute of growing up in that house. The only person in honest, the whole family who seemed to genuinely care about me was my Grandma Carol. When she'd visit, she always brought me my favorite chocolates, and sometimes she'd quietly slip me maybe $10 or $20 so I could buy myself something nice. Later, she was really the only bit of comfort and support I had got as the years went by. That really obvious favoritism for Mike just slowly, painfully turned into something else, real emotional abuse aimed squarely at me. My parents would openly make fun of my grades, scoff at my hobbies. It felt like no matter what I did, how hard I tried, I could never measure up, never be the perfect child they wanted. Even though I was pretty good at sports, they completely forbade me from joining any teams or activities. They wanted me to just focus on studying, exactly like Mike. It was incredibly frustrating, and I felt so helpless, so powerless as a kid. Then came that nightmare incident in my sophomore year. I got grounded again for what seemed like the 100th time, and this time, the terrible crime was having Snapchat on my phone. I hadn't done a single thing wrong. Like most teenagers my age, I just had the app to keep in touch with my friends. But to my parents, this was some massive crime, a complete breach of their trust because they told me I wasn't supposed to talk to my friends. They just totally lost it on me. They started throwing my things around my room, pulled the door right off its hinges, and told me I wouldn't have any privacy as long as I lived there. Watching my parents treat me that way, Mike, my own twin brother, instead of sticking up for me, actually made things worse. That awful, toxic atmosphere my parents created, with their unfairness and anger, somehow gave him an opening to use the situation to his advantage. He started this pattern of lying about me, falsely accusing me of things I absolutely never did, just so he could get away with whatever he did. If he stole something, he'd easily blame it on me, and since our parents were already predisposed to believe the worst about me, they just ate up his lies. He put me down in front of my friends. At school, make fun of how I looked. Despite all that, I still managed to have a good group of friends at school. I was friendly, easy to talk to. Mike, though, struggled socially, and I think he started to resent that I could connect with people when he, being more introverted, felt awkward. This jealousy just boiled over during our 14th birthday party. Nobody, and I mean nobody, showed up for his party. I honestly still don't know why his friends did that, but the contrast with my birthday was stark. My friends took me out for ice cream, and I had a genuinely wonderful day. That just seemed to make Mike even more furious. So to get back at me, Mike started spreading these terrible false rumors about me at school. He'd paint me as some spoiled brat. He'd flat out lie to everyone, saying I was supposedly physically hurting him at home because our parents loved him more. And without me even knowing it, He took it to a truly disturbing level to create fake evidence. He would actually punch himself on purpose, giving himself injuries like a black eye or a bruised shoulder. The next day, he'd confidently walk into school showing off these self-inflicted injuries as proof of my supposed violence, making up elaborate stories about what I'd done. Whenever our parents asked about the injuries, he'd lie, saying it was from innocent things like playing football with his friends. His lies and his supposed black eyes started to really take hold. People began to believe his twisted version of things. It wasn't long before the whispers started, and even my friends began looking at me with suspicion. At first, it was subtle. Friends who used to chat with me in the halls suddenly seemed distant. Invitations to hang out in groups just dried up. It was like a switch had been flipped, and people were wary of being associated with the girl who was supposedly spoiled and violent. One day, I finally worked up the courage to ask my now ex-best friend why things had changed between us. She opened up, telling me everything Mike had been spreading about me. She revealed the detailed lies he'd told everyone, accusing me of things I'd never ever done. Hearing her words was just shocking. It was a horrible mix of disbelief and utter betrayal, like the ground just gave way beneath me. My brother, someone I grew up with, was spreading lies about me, accusing me of things I couldn't even imagine doing. It was a betrayal that cut deep, deep down, leaving me with a knot in my stomach and a heavy heart. I confronted Mike the day after school, but he just ignored me. I begged him, absolutely begged him, to stop lying about me. But he just smirked and told me I deserved to rot alone. I was speechless. His lies, his behavior, it was starting to genuinely scare me. I wanted to talk to my parents, but I was terrified they'd just believe Mike over me, which they always did. The isolation stung so much, especially because I had always been an open, friendly person. It felt like Mike's jealousy fueling these lies was systematically destroying every connection I had built over the years. Teachers started hearing the rumors too. It was a surreal experience, like I was living in some bizarre parallel reality where the real me was completely overshadowed by this malicious story spun by my own twin. The lies had grown way beyond just typical teenage gossip. They were truly shaping how people saw me, how they perceived my character. The awful rumor quickly reached the principal's ears, and then my absolute worst nightmare came true. The principal immediately called me and Mike into his office along with our parents so we could discuss these alleged rumors. I sat there, my heart pounding in my chest, as the principal demanded the truth. I desperately hoped Mike would finally tell the truth, finally come clean. But instead, he just doubled down on the lies. He looked the principal right in the eye and said, "Yeah, the rumors are true," painting me as this terrible bully who went around beating him up when mom and dad weren't around. I couldn't believe it. Shock just washed over me as Mike continued spinning this twisted, made-up story about how I was supposedly angry at him for getting more love from our parents. It was all a bunch of nonsense, but he stuck to his story like glue. Mom started crying, hearing Mike's story, holding on to him like he was some kind of hero who had just survived a terrible ordeal. Dad tried to comfort Mike, telling him how brave he was to speak up and promising he'd make sure nothing like that ever happened to him again. After that, I tried to defend myself, pleading with the principal that it was all made up. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of accusations, desperately trying to swim to the surface, but Mike just kept going, insisting I was this angry, violent person, taking my frustrations out on him every single day. Mom's tears just kept coming, and she held on to Mike, giving me these accusing, disgusted looks. It was like fighting against a solid wall of belief in Mike's made-up story. The principal severely reprimanded me, stating firmly that the school didn't tolerate bullying and that this was grounds for suspension. I begged him not to suspend me, tears streaming down my face, trying to tell him I didn't do anything to my brother. But he shook his head, saying he couldn't just let it slide. The principal told me clearly that I would be suspended for 10 days, so that others would see this as an example not to bully anyone. It hit me so hard, and I started crying even harder, practically begging him to reconsider my parents. Clearly furious and embarrassed by the whole situation, just grabbed me and dragged me out of the principal's office. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to plead my case, make them understand, but they just shut down completely. We left the school, my heart heavy with frustration and humiliation. When we got home, things took a truly drastic turn. My dad, out of nowhere, just started packing up my things. I was shocked, confused. I had no idea what was happening. Mom asked him what he was doing, but he just yelled that he couldn't let me live in the same house as Mike anymore. I was crying hysterically, practically on my knees, pleading with Mike to just tell them the truth. But he remained cold, completely unmoved by my absolute desperation. Dad kept packing, then threw my suitcase into the foyer. I clung to my dad's legs, still begging him not to throw me out of my home. It was like a nightmare unfolding right before my eyes. He told me that a bully like me didn't deserve to live in his house, and that he would call his mother, my grandma, and ask her to come pick me up if she wanted to. It felt like the world had completely crumbled beneath me. I just stood there in shock, surrounded by my belongings scattered in the foyer. Kicked out of my own home, eventually my grandma Carol did show up. She calmly gathered all my things and helped me put them into her car, helping me into the passenger seat. She made sure I had my seatbelt on before walking purposefully toward my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell, and when my dad opened the door, she just started yelling at him for treating me that way. With stern determination, she warned him that if he or my mother ever approached me or tried to contact me again, she wouldn't hesitate for a second to get the police or Child Protective Services involved. She told him point blank that what he had done to a child like me could absolutely land him in jail. My mother, trying desperately to shift the blame, told Grandma it was all my fault. But Grandma wasn't having any of it. She stood her ground, fiercely defending me, emphasizing that I was just a child who did not deserve to be treated in such a heartless, cruel manner. That was the first time in my life I truly understood how strong my grandmother was. She didn't back down to my parents at all, and unlike them, she trusted me. She believed me completely. Eventually, we drove away, leaving behind the only home I had ever grown up in. I can't even begin to put into words the pain I felt during that time. I remember just crying on the bed at Grandma's and not being able to eat anything, no matter how much she urged me. I told her everything about what Mike had done, and she was shocked too. But she assured me over and over that she believed my side of the story. I was so incredibly grateful that I at least had one person in the world who had my back. When the 10 days of suspension were finally over, the thought of going back to school felt like stepping into a den of lions. As I walked through the familiar hallways, the faces of my classmates said it all. Judgment, whispers, sidelong glances. The heavy weight of the false accusations just hung in the air around me. Meanwhile, Mike completely ignored me, acting like I didn't even exist. He had become friends with a few people who bought his story and saw him as the poor victim of my attacks. No matter how hard I tried to tell my side of things to anyone, it just fell on deaf ears. I was an outcast, branded with a completely unjust label that stuck to me like a shadow wherever I went. The classroom, the cafeteria, the corridors, the eyes that met mine were filled with suspicion and dislike. I became a loner. I'd keep my head down, go to all my classes, eat lunch alone in the cafeteria, and go straight home right after school. I had no friends, and it felt like everyone pretty much wished I wasn't their dot, and throughout all this, my parents never once called, never checked up on me. My grandma Carol would constantly remind me that this wasn't my fault, and that life would eventually be okay, Dot. I graduated high school with pretty good grades, and I was so looking forward to college, where I desperately hoped I would finally have a better life. It was only when I went away to college that I truly experienced what freedom felt like for the very first time. No one was watching over my shoulder, no one was comparing my grades, and no one was trying to compete with me or tear me down. I met people and made genuine friendships with like-minded individuals. Despite the deep emotional and some physical scars I had carried for years because of my family and peers, I made a conscious effort to put it all behind me and really enjoy that college experience as much as I possibly could during that time. I discovered I had a real knack for content writing. I had always wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't sure it was a sustainable career path, so I'd kind of given up on that dream. But to earn some extra spending money, I decided to start writing as a freelancer. I signed up on various freelancing websites, which helped me land jobs from some pretty well-known clients. That's how I slowly started building up a portfolio of my work. I kept up this side hustle all through college and never asked my parents for a single penny. When I graduated, instead of looking for a typical corporate job, I realized that I could actually pursue content writing as a full-time career. I was doing quite well because of the clients I'd built relationships with. They kept giving me projects. Having a legitimate freelancing career didn't just make me financially independent. It also allowed me to travel the world as a digital nomad. Traveling helped me heal from my past, even though it definitely wasn't easy. I saved up as much as I could and took a chance on myself. Over the years, I've seen so much of the world, and there's still so much left to see. The only person I considered my family through all this was my grandmother, and I absolutely adored her. She was sad when I moved away, but she completely understood that I needed to be independent. Despite my busy schedule, I always made it a priority to be there for her whenever I could. I'd visit on weekends, often sharing meals or just sitting on her porch, lost in conversations that covered everything from stories about my childhood to what was happening more recently. On weekends, I dedicated whole afternoons to helping her with things around the house or going with her to the local park for a relaxed walk. Recently, I wrapped up one of the most important projects of my career. I can't name the brand, but I was incredibly fortunate to write for them. After the project was done, I asked the team I worked with to leave positive reviews on my website, which they were more than happy to do. So I took screenshots of some of their reviews to post on my Instagram, knowing that working with this brand was a big deal in my industry. As expected, lots of other content writers reached out to congratulate me on my professional success and even reposted my story to help spread the word. This is how I started getting messages from strangers who needed help with their own websites. My relatives noticed this too, and some of them reached out to congratulate me. Eventually, I was even contacted by the principal of my old college. He had reached out after seeing how well I was doing and wanted me to come back to speak at a seminar to talk to students about building a career as a content writer. I was quite nervous because I really don't do well with public speaking, but I decided to take the chance and agreed. Standing there in front of all those eager young faces, sharing my experiences and insights, it felt like my life had truly come full circle. In my speech, I spoke openly about the struggles I'd faced and how hard I'd worked to support myself despite all the difficult days. It was honestly a very fulfilling experience to empower others and contribute to the writing community. Some clips of my speech started going viral in Facebook groups because people really connected with it. It felt incredibly good to finally be recognized for my hard work. Last week, I was invited to speak on a local news channel. It was a show about the benefits of content writing, and they invited me to share my journey and insights with their viewers. I was a little nervous, naturally, but also so excited for the opportunity. During the show, I talked about my experiences, the importance of client reviews, and how something as simple as posting an appreciation review could open doors to incredible opportunities. The chance to reach a broader audience and inspire more individuals in the field was both humbling and exhilarating. When it finally aired, I shared some clips of it on my Instagram, of course. I was really proud about being invited onto a TV show, and this is how my relatives and cousins really started finding out how well I was doing in my career. You see, because my parents never really talked about me to anyone, they had no idea. I was working with popular brands and getting invited onto TV shows. That's how word spread so quickly within the family. I guess that TV interview must have finally reached my parents' ears too. because just a few days later, I was working on another project and had my phone on silent. When I finished my work, I checked my phone, and to my complete surprise, there were 6 missed calls from my mom. I was honestly shocked to see her name on my phone. It had been a very, very long time since she had called me. After all those years of silence, I couldn't even begin to understand why she was calling. I hesitantly called her back, and she picked up immediately. I asked her if everything was okay, and my mom just started congratulating me. My dad, probably sitting right there with her, jumped into the conversation too. He started asking about my life, my well-being, and I answered their questions without thinking too much about it. It didn't strike me as strange until they began to ask how much I was earning these days. I told them that was none of their business, and my dad quickly replied that we were family, so I shouldn't feel shy telling them about my income. I just told him I was doing well financially. Hearing this, my mom then started talking about how hard their life was these days. My brows furrowed instantly in suspicion. Basically, here's how our conversation pretty much went. Mom, we are retired now, you see, and we've been wanting to renovate the house for a while. It's not in the best shape, and we really don't have any savings left. Me, okay. Mom, well, your success has given us hope. After watching your TV interview today, we thought maybe you could help us out by paying for the renovations. Dad, after all, we are a family. You shouldn't hesitate to share some of your earnings with us. We can really use your help right now. Are you kidding me? Asking me for money? My jaw just dropped. Me? Are you serious? Why are you asking me for money when you haven't even talked to me for years? I have no idea what made you decide to reach out to me now, and while I appreciate the congratulations, I am absolutely not going to help you out in any way whatsoever. Hearing this, my mom started saying how I was being, well, let's just say difficult, and that I needed to support them as family. My dad added that as my parents, they deserved to be looked out after, and that this was the very least I could do. I was absolutely boiling mad at this point. I wanted so badly to just unleash everything I felt. But then I suddenly got an idea. Instead of just getting into a screaming match with them, I should teach them a lesson. One they wouldn't forget. Thinking they could just waltz back into my life and mooch off me after mistreating me all those years ago? No way. I told my parents that I was willing to help them if, and only if, they agreed to my demands. My dad, sounding curious, asked me what that could possibly be. Without a second of hesitation, I laid out my condition. If they wanted my help, they had to publicly admit, in front of our entire family and all our friends, that my brother Mike was the absolute mastermind behind the hurtful false rumors that had completely tarnished my reputation all those years ago. I wanted them to humiliate my brother the same way they had humiliated me in front of everyone by blindly believing his lies and manipulations. I wanted them to take accountability for their actions and finally acknowledge the immense pain they had caused me. Hearing my seemingly impossible condition, my dad immediately began to question why such an admission was necessary. My mom told me how this was all quite unnecessary and that we could just have a private discussion without involving others. But I held my ground firmly. This condition was non-negotiable, a prerequisite, a must-do for any assistance they wanted. Me to offer them now or in the future. As the tension on the call escalated, my dad raised his voice, forcefully asserting his role as my father and emphasizing that it was my absolute duty to help my family in need. My mom, in a last-ditch effort, urged me to do the right thing and help them, stressing again all the years they had supposedly spent raising me. I honestly couldn't help but find the bitter irony in their sudden appeal to duty and family ties. I reminded them of the past, of the clear fact that they had kicked me out, and that it was my grandmother, not them, who had actually raised me after that. They started getting more and more agitated, but I told them firmly and clearly that if they wanted to establish contact with me and seek my financial assistance from now on, then the truth needed to be publicly acknowledged, and my brother needed to face consequences for his actions. Since that conversation, my parents have been trying to call me incessantly. but I'm ignoring every single call. Honestly, I'm starting to regret even calling them back that day in the first place. It's been a whirlwind of a time since I last shared what happened, and the support and encouragement I've been getting from everyone has been absolutely overwhelming. It's heartwarming to know that I'm definitely not alone in all this. I'm so glad that everyone seems to agree that I should not engage with my parents or even consider helping them out after everything they put me through. The reason I even gave them such a condition in the first place was because I knew deep down that it was pretty much impossible for them to actually do it. I know they love my brother far too much, and despite the fact that they might have figured out by now that it was all his lies, I know they will never ever put him through what they put me through. Just recently, my brother Mike sent me a really nasty text message after my parents tried calling me again, and I refused to pick up. This is what he wrote, word for word. "Hey sis, it's been a long time since I saw you, and I can tell you that every day without you in my life has been great. I heard that mom and dad reached out to you and you gave them a crazy ultimatum. They are never going to go through with it. You know, that right. They clearly never loved you, and they will never do anything to hurt me. I admit that I did lie about you 15 years ago, but it's been a long time since then, so stop being so selfish and try to move on from the past. You are unmarried and childless. Anyway, so why do you not want to help them out by paying for their repairs and renovations around the house? Do the right thing and be a better daughter." Seeing that message felt like another stab to my chest. The sheer audacity of him to dismiss the struggles I had faced and the conditions I had set spoke volumes about his complete lack of empathy, and the attempt to guilt trip me by pointing out my unmarried and childless status added another layer of unbelievable insensitivity. His insinuation that I should prioritize their needs over my own well-being was not only deeply offensive, but also just highlighted how little he has ever thought of me, fueled by a mix of frustration and a really strong desire for justice. I decided right then that it was time to take matters into my own hands and finally reveal the truth that had been hidden for far too long. I sat down and wrote a detailed email to my parents and all my close relatives, sharing the painful, raw details of my childhood and the incredibly unfair treatment I had endured growing up in my family house. In the email, I described the strict, almost oppressive environment I lived under my parents' roof and how starkly different they treated me compared to Mike. The email also delved into the malicious and completely untrue rumor my brother had spread about me in school, which had led to such severe consequences and utterly destroyed my reputation at the time. I wrote about how my parents had literally kicked me out onto the street, and how, if it hadn't been for my grandmother, I honestly don't know what would have happened to me. Towards the end of the email, I asked everyone to read a message my brother, Mike, had sent me. I attached a screenshot of the text message where he admitted to lying about me. It was a clear, undeniable confession that I hoped would finally expose the lies that had persisted for way too long. I sent that email just about an hour ago, and I just know, that all hell is about to break loose once my parents and Mike read it. It's been about a month now since I sent that email. And yes, as you can imagine, my family absolutely erupted. After receiving it, my parents have faced significant criticism from relatives who were previously unaware of the extent of the favoritism and emotional abuse I suffered. A lot of family members reached out to me directly, telling me they had no idea any of this was happening and apologizing for not being there for me back then. My brother and my parents started sending me a barrage of text messages that were getting more and more abusive and even threatening. It was really starting to worry me. So I decided to reach out to a lawyer who sent them a formal cease and desist notice. It basically warned them to stop contacting me immediately, and that if they didn't, they would face serious legal consequences. I guess that must have finally scared them into silence, because they have stopped contacting me altogether. My Grandma Carol thinks I did exactly the right thing by letting everyone know what happened, and she supports me 100%. She is truly the only person who matters to me in all of this. So I'm incredibly glad she's got my back. It's now been about 2 months since my last update. I'm happy to report that everything in my life is going well as can be expected. Professionally, my content writing business is absolutely flourishing. The invitations to speak at seminars and podcasts just keep coming in, really solidifying my position as a respected figure in my field. I am as close to my grandmother as ever. I recently took a week-long break from my work just so I could spend some quality time with her. She's really into gardening these days and taught me so much about all the different flowers and herbs in her garden. The moments I spend with her, whether we're sharing a meal, having a heartfelt conversation, or just quietly enjoying each other's company, are my most favorite and cherished memories. My family, meaning my parents and brother, have not contacted me at all since receiving that letter from my lawyer, so I'm incredibly happy that they are staying away. Personally, I have started going to therapy. I hope that I can finally work on truly healing myself from everything that happened. I think this will probably be the last update for now, Dotso. What's your take on Sarah's decision? Was she too harsh? Or was this the only way she could truly protect herself and find peace? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And hey, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.